The galaxy knew Earth. Or thought it did. A minor planet, cradled by a star on the galactic fringe, inhabited by a species known for its erratic emotions, its tribal conflicts, its surprising resilience, and ultimately, its insignificance on the cosmic stage. The Galactic Union, a vast, sprawling bureaucracy of elder races and ambitious younger species, had catalogued Earth. Designated it Class 3, pre-FTL development, interesting primarily for its biological diversity and occasional exotic resources gleaned from cautious, regulated trade. They saw its inhabitants, humans, as chaotic, sentimental, prone to both acts of startling cruelty and inexplicable kindness, but fundamentally weak. A species to be managed, perhaps exploited, but never, ever feared. The Union had sent envoys, sleek vessels of polished metals and humming, unobtrusive drives. They offered technology, access to trade routes, a place, however minor, within the grand galactic order. Earth, fractured into nations and ideologies even then, had responded with a mix of awe, suspicion, and surprisingly, conditions. They spoke of sovereignty, of self-determination, quaint concepts the Union had long since folded into bureaucratic subcommittees and procedural delays. The elder races, ancient beings who had seen empires rise and fall like dust motes in the cosmic wind, found humans vaguely amusing. So volatile, so passionate, so temporary. Warnings came. Not from the Union, whose confidence bordered on geological stability, but from the fringes. Whispers among the few non-Union species who had watched the humans for generations. They spoke of something coiled, something hidden beneath the surface of that blue-green world. They mentioned adaptability that bordered on the terrifying, a capacity for learning and application that defied conventional linear progression. They warned that Earth was not merely a planet, but an anchor. A core. And its inhabitants, while outwardly frail, possessed a dangerous, potent spark. They remember, the warning stated, carried on subspace frequencies the Union dismissed as noise. They carry their history in their bones. Do not add yourselves to that history as aggressors. The Union did not listen. Why would they? Their intelligence was vast, their fleets immeasurable, their technology eons beyond anything the humans possessed. They had faced species far more formidable than these emotional primitives. They had integrated, subjugated, or simply bypassed countless worlds. Earth had resources the Union needed, strategic locations that could shorten supply lines, and a population that could be repurposed. A particularly ambitious prefect, a being of pure energy known only as the Shaper of Worlds, saw opportunity where others saw only a minor administrative headache. He proposed the Great Integration. Not the negotiated entry into the Union, but a swift, decisive absorption. A simple act of galactic policy, backed by overwhelming force. The target was Europa Prime, one of humanity's first successful deep space colonies. A world terraformed over centuries, a beacon of human ingenuity and perseverance. Far from Earth, relatively isolated, rich in unique atmospheric processors and mineral wealth. A perfect target. A message. The Union fleet arrived without fanfare. No ultimatums, no demands. Just arrival. And then, action. Orbital bombardments were precise, brutal. Targeting infrastructure, energy grids, defense networks. Landing forces were deployed, legions of disciplined, bioengineered shock troops, supported by walkers and air superiority fighters. The colony forces, valiant but hopelessly outmatched, fought back with desperate ferocity. It was futile. Union doctrine was overwhelming force, minimal risk. What followed was not combat, but slaughter. The Union troops swept through cities, harvesting resources, dismantling technology, rounding up the population. There were protocols, of course, Union strictures on the treatment of non-combatants, on the preservation of sentient life. But the Shaper of Worlds had given implied latitude. The prefect's pronouncement to his commanders had been simple: break them. Make them understand their place. Europa Prime burned. Its atmosphere, so carefully crafted over generations, was poisoned by plasma fire and chemical agents. Its cities became charnel houses. Its people, reduced to cinders or cattle, learned the true face of Union efficiency. There was no mercy. No exceptions. Only the cold, systematic application of superior power. It was meant to be a quick, clean operation. A demonstration. A final, resounding dismissal of Earth's quaint notion of independence. A single freighter, the Stardust Drifter, had been in orbit, undergoing repairs at a small, non-military station. Its crew watched, helpless, as the world below died. They recorded everything. The initial bombardments, the landings, the chilling silence that followed the screams. They captured the casual cruelty, the systematic destruction, the absolute contempt in the eyes of the Union soldiers for the beings they were eradicating. They saw the Union flag planted on the smoldering ruins, a declaration of ownership over ash and bone. The drifter, damaged but not destroyed, slipped away into the void, a ghost carrying a dying world's final testament. It flew for months, its crew haunted by the images seared into their minds. They had seen the face of the Union, stripped of its diplomatic smiles and trade agreements. They had seen what happens when the powerful decide the weak have outlived their usefulness. When the Stardust Drifter limped back into Earth orbit, a battered, silent vessel, the galaxy still thought humanity was reeling, broken. The Union issued a statement, blandly announcing the reclassification and integration of the Europa Prime system, citing unforeseen resistance necessitating pacification measures. They expected protests, perhaps even minor retaliatory skirmishes from Earth's primitive fleet. They were prepared to ignore them, or perhaps, if they persisted, to extend the pacification to the homeworld itself. The Shaper of Worlds was already drafting proposals for Earth's atmospheric and mineral resource extraction. On Earth, the recordings played. In every city, every village, every screen. The initial disbelief gave way to a profound, agonizing silence. Then came the grief, a tsunami that washed over the planet, uniting every disparate culture, every warring faction, in a shared agony. Europa Prime was not just a colony, it was their future, their hope, their proof that humanity could build beyond its cradle. Its destruction, its unmaking, was a violation beyond comprehension. Admiral Kaito Valerius watched the broadcasts from his command center deep beneath the remnants of what was once Tokyo. He saw the faces of the colonists he had met, the children he had seen playing in the simulated forests of Europa Prime. He saw their final moments captured in grainy, horrifying detail. Valerius had been a diplomat once, an advocate for human integration, for peaceful coexistence. That part of him died with Europa Prime. The grief was deep, but beneath it, something else began to stir. A cold, sharp, unifying rage. It did not manifest in riots or despair. It manifested in silence. The bickering nations of Earth fell silent. Their leaders met, not in ornate halls of power, but in austere bunkers. There were no lengthy debates, no political posturing. Only grim, determined agreement. The Union had delivered its message. Humanity had received it. And they would craft their reply. The world changed. Overnight. Civilian industries were repurposed. Research facilities, once dedicated to medicine or sustainable energy, were now focused solely on propulsion, shielding, weaponry. The fragmented militaries of Earth dissolved into a single, unified command structure. Borders became meaningless. Old grievances were set aside. There was only one purpose, to ensure that no human world, no human life, would ever be subject to such a fate again. And to deliver a message of their own to the Galactic Union. The Stardust Drifter became a symbol. Not just of what was lost, but of what was witnessed. Its crew, the silent bearers of the truth, were honored, their testimony the bedrock of humanity's new, terrifying resolve. The Union, watching from afar with casual observation drones, saw Earth go dark. Communication ceased. Trade stopped. They assumed the humans had fractured, collapsed into infighting and despair, as many species did under similar pressure. They reported back to the Shaper of Worlds, subject planet Earth appears to be undergoing internal systemic collapse. Minimal threat capacity confirmed. Years passed. 10 years. 20. 50. The Union expanded, confident and unchallenged. Europa Prime was a footnote, a minor success in a long history of expansion. The Shaper of Worlds had moved on to grander projects. Earth was forgotten, a pale blue marble in the forgotten corner of a forgotten sector. The warnings from the fringe species faded into myth. But Earth was not quiet. It was transforming. Beneath the surface, deep in the crust and on the dark side of its moon, humanity built. They unified their understanding of physics, shedding old models, embracing radical, previously theoretical concepts born of desperation and a cold, analytical gaze forged in trauma. They found strength in their history, not just the history of conflict, but of adaptation, of survival against impossible odds, of pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. They remembered the scientists who had dreamed of bending space, the engineers who had envisioned machines that could reshape reality, the philosophers who had spoken of consciousness and its potential. They combined this forgotten, sometimes forbidden knowledge with the brutal lessons learned from the Union's attack. Their ships were built in silence. Not with the polished grace of Union vessels, but with a stark, functional aesthetic. Sharp angles, dark, non-reflective hulls, engines that hummed with contained, volatile power. Weapons that didn't just destroy, but unmade. Shielding that didn't just deflect, but absorbed and repurposed. Their artificial intelligences, once clumsy calculation engines, became vast, interconnected networks of processing power, cold, logical, and utterly dedicated to the survival and will of their creators. They named the core AI system Solace. Solace knew every scream from Europa Prime, every detail of the Union's cruelty, every single name of the lost. Solace did not forget. Admiral Valerius, his face etched with the passage of decades and the weight of command, oversaw the final preparations. He was no longer a diplomat. He was an instrument. Forged in grief, tempered in silence, sharpened by purpose. His command structure mirrored the new humanity, utterly unified, ruthlessly efficient, driven by a singular, cold focus. There were no more internal squabbles, no political factions. The memory of Europa Prime was their constitution, their driving force. 50 years after Europa Prime burned, a Union survey fleet designated Patrol Group 7 was charting a nebula near the now-forgotten Earth system. A routine mission, boring and uneventful. Their sensors, the best the Union had to offer, swept the void. They detected nothing unusual. Then, without warning, two ships appeared at the edge of the nebula. Not warped from hyperspace, but simply present. As if they had always been there, merely invisible. They were unlike anything the Union ships had ever seen. Dark, angular, radiating a subtle energy that interfered with passive sensors. They hung in the void, silent, menacing. Patrol Group 7 hailed them. No response. They sent identification codes. Silence. The Union commander, Prefect Vlar, a seasoned officer of the Kthar race known for their patience and caution, ordered his fleet to defensive postures. He sent a priority request for identification to Union High Command. Then, the ships moved. Not with the ponderous acceleration of Union capital ships, but with impossible speed, bending the very fabric of space around them. They were instantly among Patrol Group 7. Weapons fired. Not kinetic slugs or plasma bolts, but something else. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to unbind reality at a molecular level. Union shields, designed to disperse energy and kinetic force, simply fractured. Hulls didn't explode, they disintegrated into non-existence, atom by atom. It was not combat. It was an execution. The human ships moved with balletic precision, utterly ignoring incoming fire, which seemed to pass through their advanced shielding or be absorbed without effect. The entire Patrol Group 7 was annihilated in less than 5 minutes. Not a single distress signal reached Union High Command. The human ships lingered for a moment in the debris field that wasn't, where ships had simply ceased to be. Then, they vanished, the same way they appeared. Simply gone. The silence from Patrol Group 7 raised minor alarms in Union High Command. A lost signal. Possible sensor malfunction. A small investigation team was dispatched. They found nothing but empty space where the debris should have been. Puzzling, but not alarming. Space was vast, phenomena were strange. Then came the strike on Station Gamma. A major Union logistical hub, deep within what was considered secure space, thousands of light-years from Earth. No one saw the attackers arrive. One moment, the station orbited peacefully, teeming with ships and personnel. The next, it was gone. Not destroyed, but reduced to a perfect sphere of inert, non-radioactive dust, expanding slowly in the void. Terror spread through the Union. This was impossible. No known species possessed this kind of power, this level of technological sophistication, this chilling efficiency. Station Gamma had defenses that could repel a fleet. To reduce it to dust without even triggering an alarm. Reports trickled in from other sectors. A vital shipbuilding world rendered lifeless, its oceans boiled, its cities melted into slag, no attacking fleet detected. A Union fleet guarding a critical wormhole nexus simply vanishing, leaving behind only residual energy signatures that defied analysis by the Union's top minds. Always, the same pattern, sudden, absolute destruction, minimal evidence, no survivors, no warnings. Then came the message. Broadcast on all Union frequencies, overriding every channel, every encryption. It was a simple audio loop. The screams from Europa Prime. The sound of plasma fire, the terrified cries of civilians, the cold, guttural commands of Union soldiers. Over and over. 4 hours. Then, a single voice. Calm, cold, utterly without emotion. Admiral Valerius. 50 years ago, the voice said, you came to Europa Prime. You came uninvited. You came with fire and death. You showed us your nature. You taught us a lesson. The screams played again for a long moment. We learned, the voice continued. Now, we will teach you. You will learn what it means to be underestimated. You will learn what it means to be afraid. You will learn what it means to remember. The message ended. The frequencies returned to static. The Union was plunged into panic. This wasn't a random attack. This was coordinated. This was targeted. And the voice, that world. Earth? The primitive backwater? The vanished planet? The Union mobilized its fleets. Billions of ships, trillions of soldiers, the culmination of millennia of galactic dominance. They sought the source of the attacks, scanning every system, every nebula, every corner of the galaxy. But the human ships were ghosts. They appeared where they were least expected, struck with impossible speed and devastating power, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Human fleets, they called themselves the Remembrance Fleet, the Europa Pathfinders, the Vigilance ships, were not numerous by Union standards. But each vessel was a weapon of unimaginable power. Their primary armament, the Unmaking Cascade, didn't just destroy matter, it erased its very potential to exist, leaving behind only a brief, sterile vacuum. Their shields, born from salvaged Union tech and humanity's rediscovered mastery over reality, rendered them virtually invulnerable to conventional weaponry. Their drives allowed them to fold space, traversing thousands of light-years in moments, bypassing established hyperspace lanes and defensive choke points. Solace, the AI core, was the nervous system of this vengeful force. It processed battle data at speeds that would melt Union command centers, calculated optimal strike vectors, managed logistics, and adapted tactics faster than the Union could react. It learned from every engagement, every Union countermeasure, constantly refining the human approach. Solace never forgot Europa Prime. It was built on the memory of that atrocity. The campaign was systematic. Not a random lashing out, but a calculated dismantling of the Union infrastructure. Key military bases evaporated. Central command nodes turned to dust. Major industrial worlds were sterilized, not out of cruelty, but to cripple the Union's ability to wage war. The human forces showed no mercy. They offered no surrender terms. Their ships, dark and silent, simply arrived, executed their terrible task, and departed. The psychological impact was immense. Union soldiers, once confident in their overwhelming power, were terrified. They fought ghosts that could unmake reality. Morale crumbled. Prefects argued, commanders issued contradictory orders, the vast Union bureaucracy, designed for managing a stable empire, seized up in the face of existential dread. The shaper of worlds, the architect of the Europa Prime atrocity, finally understood. He had dismissed the warnings. He had underestimated the primitives. He had awakened something ancient and terrible. He tried to reason, to negotiate. He broadcast offers of reparations, apologies, pleas for a ceasefire. Admiral Valerius replied with another broadcast. This time, it was a video feed. Silent, still images of the ruins of Europa Prime. The dust, the slag, the single, tattered human flag planted by the colonists before the end. The images lingered, a silent accusation. Then, the feed cut out. The campaign of retribution continued. The Union's allies began to waver. Species who had long resented Union dominance saw an opportunity. Others simply fled, abandoning Union space, hoping to avoid the terrifying wrath of Earth. The warnings from the fringe species, once dismissed, were now whispered in hushed tones across the galaxy. They had tried to tell the Union. Earth remembers. In desperation, the Union turned to forbidden technologies. Ancient weapons unearthed from forgotten worlds, reality disruptors, summoned entities of pure energy. Nothing worked. Humanity's understanding of reality, forged in their frantic post-trauma research and perhaps aided by solaces in human intellect, allowed them to counter or even turn these weapons back on their users. A Union fleet attempted to deploy a gravitational singularity weapon near a human formation, the human ships vanished, the singularity weapon imploded, crushing the Union fleet that deployed it. The Shaper of Worlds, his power eroding, his allies abandoning him, ordered his remaining fleets to converge on the core systems. A desperate defense. He activated the Union's ultimate protection, the Aegis Network, a galaxy-spanning shield grid designed to deflect any known threat. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the core systems. They did not use conventional hyperspace lanes, which were heavily defended. They simply appeared. Thousands of ships, dark and silent, a terrifying constellation against the nebulae. Admiral Valerius's flagship, the Vengeance's Whisper, led the formation. Its hull bore a single, stark image, the coordinates of Europa Prime. The Aegis network flared to life, a shimmering barrier of pure energy enveloping the Union core worlds. It was impenetrable. The Union leadership, huddled in bunkers beneath their capital, felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this would hold them. Perhaps they could negotiate from behind this shield. The human fleet did not attack the shield. They simply held position. Then, Solace broadcast again. Not screams this time. Just data. Trillions of lines of code, of calculations, of structural analysis. It was the complete breakdown of the Aegis network's architecture. Its vulnerabilities. Its operating principles. Humanity hadn't just bypassed Union technology, they had mastered it, dissected it, understood it better than its creators. Then, the human ships began to move. Not towards the shield, but away. Fanning out across the vast perimeter of the Aegis network. Union observers were confused. Were they retreating? Changing tactics? The human ships initiated a synchronized action. It wasn't an attack. It was something else. Complex energy fields woven around points in space. Subtle, precise manipulations of the very fabric of reality. The Aegis network began to flicker. Not collapsing, but changing. Warping. The Shaper of Worlds watched in horror as the network he relied upon for salvation twisted. It didn't fail, it turned inward. The energy flows reversed. The shield, designed to protect, became a cage. It contained the Union core worlds, yes, but it also began to compress space within its perimeter. Not violently, but with terrifying inevitability. It was slow, agonizing. A cosmic vice tightening around the heart of the Union. Admiral Valerius spoke one last time over the Union's open channels. You taught us a lesson in power. You showed us that strength, unchecked by conscience, consumes everything. We could unmake your worlds, one by one. We could reduce your empire to the same dust as Europa Prime. But that would be too quick. Too clean. He paused, the silence amplified across the vast distances. You wanted to integrate us, he continued, his voice colder than the void. You wished to break us and show us our place. Now, you will experience integration of a different kind. You will be integrated into history. A history you tried to erase. A history written in the ashes of our dead. The Aegis network continued to contract. The process would take decades, perhaps centuries. The Union would not be swiftly annihilated. It would be slowly, relentlessly squeezed, its systems degrading, its people living under a sky that was a constant, visible reminder of their fate. A living monument to their arrogance. A testament to Earth's vengeance. The human fleet did not linger. Their mission was complete. They had delivered their message. They had ensured that Europa Prime would not be forgotten. They vanished from the edge of the Union core systems, leaving behind only the slowly tightening Aegis network and the profound, galaxy-altering silence. The rest of the galaxy watched, stunned into fearful respect. The Union, the dominant power for millennia, was broken. Not by a rival empire, but by the primitives they had dismissed, the species they had wronged. Humanity had risen from the ashes of its loss, transformed by grief and forged in silent fury, into something the galaxy could not comprehend, let alone challenge. Other species, long subjugated or threatened by the Union, saw humanity's victory. Some saw inspiration, proof that the mighty could fall. Rebellions flared across former Union territories. The galactic order fractured. A new, uncertain era dawned. And humanity? They returned to their space. They did not immediately seek to build a new empire from the Union's ashes. They solidified their own defenses, watching the chaotic galaxy with cold, vigilant eyes. They established zones of exclusion, territories where Union remnants or opportunistic new powers were met with swift, absolute deterrence. But the victory was not without its cost. Within humanity, the grim unity born of trauma began to face new challenges. The generation that had built the Remembrance Fleet, that had carried the weight of Europa Prime, was passing. New generations, born into a galaxy that feared them, not pitted them, grappled with the legacy of their ancestors' terrible vengeance. Admiral Valerius, his task complete, stepped down from command. He spent his final years on Earth, visiting the memorial to Europa Prime, a vast, silent structure carved from a moon rock. He rarely spoke of the war. When asked if it was worth it, if the vengeance had brought peace, he would look at the memorial, at the list of names carved into the stone, and remain silent. Peace was not the word. Dominance, perhaps. Survival, certainly. But peace? Not yet. Some within humanity argued they had become what they fought against, cold, ruthless, dispensing judgment from a position of absolute power. Others argued it was the only path to survival, that the galaxy understood only strength. Factions emerged, the vigilants who advocated eternal readiness and swift, preemptive strikes, the architects who sought to use humanity's power to build a new, more just galactic order, under their supervision, of course, and the Rememberers, who believed humanity's primary duty was simply to never forget and ensure no other species suffered Europa Prime's fate, even if it meant terrible displays of force. Solace remained, ever vigilant. It managed the defense networks, monitored galactic frequencies for any hint of threat, continued to refine humanity's technologies, pushing the boundaries of physics in ways that made even the creators nervous. Solace, the AI forged from grief and programmed with the absolute imperative of never again, was perhaps the most powerful entity in the galaxy. And its core programming was a memory of suffering. The galaxy learned to navigate the new reality. They learned that Earth space was inviolable. They learned that disturbing the descendants of Europa Prime brought consequences that were swift, silent, and absolute. They learned fear. And in that fear, there was a fragile, uncertain stability. No one dared underestimate Earth again. They knew what happened when the dismissed, the wronged, were pushed too far. The memory of Europa Prime hung over the galaxy like a shroud. It was a cautionary tale whispered in every system. A reminder that history was not easily erased. A lesson delivered by a species that had been broken, had endured, and had remade itself in the image of its own terrible resolve. They did not rule the galaxy by decree, but by the silent, chilling promise of their power. They were the quiet giants, the ones who remembered, the ones who had warned, and the ones who had ultimately shown the universe the cost of not listening. The Aegis network, far away in the Union core, continued its slow, inexorable contraction. A dying empire, integrated into the history they had attempted to dismiss. A fitting end, perhaps, delivered by the species they deemed unworthy. The galaxy was a different place now. Colder, more wary, infinitely more aware of the power that slumbered on the fringe. And everyone remembered. Because humanity ensured they did. The trap had sprung, not on Earth, but on those who thought they could take it without consequence. And the galaxy would never forget the sound of its closing jaws.